Here's a question for you. Do you think you need a front end for your synthesizers? In front of me is the Analog Heat Plus FX. I've been using this box for a couple months at this point, basically when it came out. And I also have a Korg Modwave hooked up to its side, which is a really cool digital wavetable synthesizer. I actually think it doesn't get enough love in the YouTube spectrum, but that's a different story. I've chosen to hook this guy up to the Analog Heat FX to talk about a synthesizer front end for your studio type of concept. Let's get into it. First, some quick business. If you want to support the channel, a like and subscribe goes a long way. And if you want to go further than that, using our affiliate links down below helps out the channel greatly. Our affiliate of choice is Zounds, and they do sell the Elektron Analog Heat Plus FX. Yes, it's very expensive for what it does. We'll get more to that, more pros and cons section a bit later in the video. But I just want to say, if you do want to support the channel, consider using our affiliate links. And we also have a Patreon, and we have a website that has MPC sample packs. So the concept of a front end for your studio is actually a very common music production, audio engineering type of term. If you look at a microphone, it needs a preamp, and pretty much all high-end studios have some sort of vocal chain or microphone chain, which usually involves a high-end preamp and then followed into maybe a compressor, equalizer, or maybe two compressors and an equalizer before it even hits an analog to digital conversion that goes into a DAW or whatever system, a tape or anything like that. So the concept of a front end for your instruments is very common, and I don't see it too often with the synthesizer YouTube world. I see people just talking about the synth, and then they'll say whether or not it's cold, fat, warm, sterile, all these terms, they get thrown around. And the fact is, a lot of those terms can be heavily influenced with some sort of front end piece of gear. Enter the Analog Heat Plus FX. Now, I'm not saying that this is the bulletproof solution for those terms of discussion about shaping whatever input, but it does do a particularly good job at having the full spectrum. So I've chosen the Modwave in front of me because it is a digital synth. These set of Korgs, while they're awesome, they do have these digital engines behind them. The OP6, WaveState, and the Modwave. I own all three, so again, I think they're awesome, but they are definitely digital sounding synthesizers. For instance, what patch is this? This actually is a cool sounding patch right here. So this is just a regular Init performance right here. Now if I click on the Analog Heat, I can then start adding some drive to it. So I'm just gonna set this real quick. So 100% on the mix. We have current saturation analog mode. We're going to set the filter. We're gonna bring it down to noon or so. I'm also gonna increase the EQ. And the EQ right here. Resonance should be down. I don't have any effects on. It's just the analog section essentially. Let's go to enhance. Without. And with. So obviously distorting right there, getting really broken up. I'm gonna back it off. I'm gonna go to saturation, which is a nice gentle type of saturation. Also bring down the low and the high EQ. Now one thing that's really nice about this is the equalizer is actually analog, and analog equalizers are very nice, just like a filter is really nice. Without. And with. So I like that breakup that's happening right there. I'm actually a real big fan of analog distortion. When I can choose analog distortion, I almost always choose it over digital emulations. Digital emulations have definitely gotten really good, but there's still something about the breakup of a true analog circuit. So let's take this a step further, because right now it's basically just an Analog Heat, which I do own, by the way. I've had this guy for several years at this point, and I'm also a big fan of it. So the Analog Heat Plus FX adds effects to the already awesome analog circuitry that's got going on. So we go over to effects right here, and we sweep through. You can start with bits first. Turn that on. You can drop the sample rate. Drop the bits. Next we got warble, which is like a tape effect. I'm gonna turn this on. drop the depth a bit. Make it fully stereo. Bring up some of the noise. Change it to a bandpass. Now, one major problem with the warble, which honestly sucks, but it is the way it is it introduces about 10 milliseconds of delay into the signal or so. I actually don't know the exact amount, but it's enough to notice when you're sending a drum loop through and notice that it's off time just a bit. It's unfortunate. I know other units can actually do a warble effect without the delay in there, so I don't know why they went ahead and chose this. But I mean, it does sound good. Like I like the effect that comes out of it, but do know that there is a definite delay that gets introduced when you turn the warble on. So for instance, you won't be able to tell through the video, but for me, I can feel it. Being in music production and also being a gamer, I can pick up on that 10 milliseconds right there. So we're gonna keep that on. Let's actually drop this noise so it's not too prevalent. Moving on. So you have a compressor in there, which I think is like the Digitakt compressor. Then you also have bass focus, so you can tighten up the bass if you desire. You have chorus. It's pretty cool. Then you have a delay. Let's turn up the feedback. Also turn up the width. Let's shape it as well. Scoop out some lows and highs. And drop the send amount. Also, let's change it to mix. You might be wondering why we would do that. Well, the next one is reverb. And if you turn that on, now the delay will be in the reverb signal path as well. Turn up the decay. Same thing, scoop out some lows and highs. Maybe drop it a bit. Actually, yeah, let's do a little bit of reverb, keep it as a send, and increase the decay almost to an infinite. So we've basically designed a sound with just the Init patch of the Modwave. So we take this off. While the effects aren't the greatest by any means, they're definitely usable, serviceable effects for a synthesizer front end, which is kind of the point behind this video. Now, one of the cool things is this flow page and allows you to reorder the blocks, because if you're hearing this right now, you might be thinking like, well, what if you could filter out the delay with this actual filter right here? Well, here's what we do. We go to delay, click it, and then bring it all the way over so it's in front of the heat. Now we've effectively achieved that, which is awesome. Same thing with the warble. Let's say that that hiss that's in there, the tape hiss, we want to be able to filter that out with the filter as well. Now let's go to the warble and increase that noise so it's more apparent. By the way, you can actually hook up expression pedals, so you can control this frequency cutoff with an expression pedal, which is nice. Without? width. I think that's pretty cool, honestly. So I'm sure by now you can see the power of this hooking up to a mono synth. Like let's say you have a Behringer Neutron or Model D or something like that. Pairing one of those up with something like the Analog Heat FX, pretty powerful because you have a lot of sonic opportunities right there. Now you could obviously do this type of stuff inside of a DAW. Totally get that. But there is this hands-on control and being able to affect things right away, which is really awesome. You also have these modulation type of things with LFOs and envelopes, and the envelope will follow the input signal. That definitely opens up possibilities for sound shaping. I don't find myself using them as much, honestly. And really, the way I've just shown you right here with making a sound is actually how I use this box. I don't really use the presets, and I do some quick shaping, get my tone, and then record that. Let's actually change the preset on here to have something a little more interesting than an init patch. So this is Airy Plucks on the Modwave. Relatively digital sounding patch. Let's see how this sounds with what I got going on. Let's take this off. Let's actually see about some arpeggiation. Put hold on arpeggiator. Yeah. I mean, that's a cool sounding patch. Don't get me wrong, I definitely like what comes out of the Modwave. What I'm about to do to it is mangle it up. Let's actually put the bits in front of the heat. It's kind of interesting. Full-on noise. Okay. Back to this pristine sounding patch. I'm actually going to reset this. I'm going to go preset. I'm just going to grab another empty preset. I'm going to reset this stuff up. Alright, we'll stick with the saturation. Turn this on. Open up the filter. Drop down the level. So here's no saturation. And then width. Obviously there's a volume kick in right there, but there's an overall fatness that gets added. EQ in some low end. By the way, the EQ changes depending on the distortion unit that you choose, which is really cool. And I didn't mention there's a bunch of distortion units in here. I mean, rough crunch, classic distortion, round fuzz. Sounds really cool. Let's go bandpass again. Without and with. Anyways, let's go back to saturation here. So I do like the sound. Is this dying on me? The sound? Interesting. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to the effects here. So let's turn the bits on. I'm going to keep the sample rate open completely, so there's no sample rate reduction. But I do like the bit reduction to add a bit noise in the signal. We'll keep warble off for now. Put the delay on again, and the reverb. Give it a lot of reverb. Turn down the reverb a bit though. Okay. Turn it off. It's a nice pristine patch. And we'll put it back on. Now we got some dirt. A lot more character. Yeah. So obviously something like this depends on what you want. Clearly, like if you're not going to reach for something to dirty up a signal when you want a nice pristine sounding patch. But I do think there's a lot of power in a device like the Analog Heat Plus effects. Now, I think its biggest downside is the cost. It's $1,000. That is a lot of money for something that is basically just an effects unit processor. Now, we have seen more and more effects unit processors essentially hit that $1,000 mark, like the H90, I think. There's been some stuff that's come out that is definitely saying, hey, I'm practically a rack mount piece of gear processor type of level of cost. So things are getting kind of spendy. And Elektron is definitely not shy to put out expensive products that don't do as much as you think that they should. So digging even further, I think the effects, while I like them, I think they're missing algorithms. Like the reverb is basically just one algorithm. And same thing with the delay. For a $1,000 box, I really think that they could have added more stuff in there. Chorus models, delay, reverb models. Now, it's possible they could too, because this is software underneath there. And Elektron does seem to support the products for several years. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of update that does add some new algorithms for their stuff in here. And I would be very much appreciative of that, because I'm definitely liking this box. It is something that I don't think you see too often out in the wild right now for the footprint and its feature set, having both EQ, filter, drive, and also a bunch of different distortion characters. Like that's relatively unique in the market right now. You also have Overbridge, which I'll talk about in a second. So in terms of the analog stuff, very powerful. Now you could just get a regular analog heat like I have right now, the Mark 1 version, and I'm sure it's like $500-600 or something like that on Reverb at this point, and you wouldn't have the additional effects. Now, are the additional effects useful to you? I can't answer that. What I do think though is if you are a touring or performing musician, you need a box that can handle a lot of duties without having to have a bunch of pedals in front of you to do all the same stuff, then it hits a pretty good sweet spot, even though it's pretty expensive for that sweet spot. If you do need more complex reverbs or more lush sounding reverbs, delays, and choruses and all that, then you're going to be disappointed, and you're still going to want to reach for certain pedals that hit that mark for you. But when you do add up all the cost of additional pedals, like reverbs, delays, choruses, even distortion units and all that, you basically hit the same cost or more than you would with just an Analog Heat Plus effects. While I am knocking points for the box being expensive, I am also aware that if you were to go get nice boutique versions of different effects models, you're going to be past $1,000 at that point anyways. But you'll also have a lot more capability at that point. So let's talk about Overbridge real quick. Now, I'm not going to do an example of Overbridge, but basically what you can do is hook this up to your DAW, and then you have the ability to drop a plugin in and have the Analog Heat Plus effects apply to any track that's in your DAW. So you could have a VST synth loaded up and then apply some analog distortion directly into the DAW. That sounds awesome and a bit too good to be true, and in a way it is a little too good to be true because Overbridge introduces a lot of delay into the signal. When I loaded this up, I think it was like 60 plus milliseconds of delay added into the plugin. Right away, it kind of reduces your ability to play it live or have the feeling of playing it live because there's so much delay that gets added. There's also recommendations of having a minimum buffer size for when you do run Overbridge inside of your DAW to reduce the possibility of clicks and pops. The concept on paper of Overbridge and what it can offer is like amazing. It just doesn't quite hit the mark for me in my production environment. So more often than not, I'm actually not using Overbridge because again, that delay just adds too much into the mix. With the other Elektron boxes, if you do need to multi-track the stuff out of, say, a Digitact and have all 8 tracks come out through Overbridge, that's really awesome, very powerful. But again, it introduces delay into your setup, like a guaranteed amount of anywhere from 50 to 70 milliseconds of delay into your DAW. That's a lot, honestly. So what I'm saying is your mileage is definitely going to vary when it comes to Overbridge. Now, if you don't have an audio interface, you could technically use the analog heat plus effects as an audio interface for your laptop or whatever computer you're using. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting the analog heat just because it could be an audio interface for you. I think there's better solutions out there, but it is a nice bonus to know that it can also double as an audio interface for other things in a pinch, basically. It does require custom drivers, so it's not going to be one of these class compliant audio interface type of things. At least I don't think. If I'm wrong about that, correct me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure you need to have Overbridge installed to be able to use it as an audio interface. And there is actually a cool setting in here with the audio routing. If you go here, you can actually adjust how the analog in and out is depending on how Overbridge is set up. So right now, analog in will go to both the analog heat or the heat section and then also the Overbridge. But you can actually adjust this to be off. And now input and output is strictly through Overbridge, and the analog heat effects section is only applied to whatever plugin is loaded up through the Overbridge. Now that's really cool. So essentially you could have this hooked up to your laptop, have the main outputs sent to speakers or, be plugged in through headphones, have an input for a synth or another machine that you're working with, and then still be able to load up the plugin inside your DAW, say Ableton Live, and have the effects that are on the analog heat. So that's cool. I like that a lot. It would have been awesome if they took it one step further. I could see this being a really killer solution to getting other effects units into your DAW that are hardware based. Like let's say the microcosm or basically any type of analog effects processor. If they made it to where the flow right here had a 9th box and that was Overbridge in and out, then it would be amazing to be able to drop the plugin in your DAW and then say process with the analog heat, and then at a certain point it would send out the outputs into a different effects processor, say like a microcosm, and then sends that back into the inputs, and then that would continue the chain inside Overbridge. That would be amazing. And then at that point, I'd be like, okay, well, if I know I have to deal with the input delay with Overbridge, fine. It's just nice to know that you have a quick and easy way to route stuff in and out. Now, as it stands right now, that obviously is not the case, and it's not possible. If someone from Elektron is watching, maybe consider that in a firmware update, having like a Overbridge dedicated effects processing route type of thing. Because like I said, being able to process additional effects pedals really fast via basically a click of a plugin inside of a DAW would actually be extremely powerful. And this is so close to getting there, just not quite. At least I don't think it is. Again, if I'm wrong about this stuff, drop a comment below, correct me, and I'd be happy to investigate that and maybe pin a comment saying, actually, this is the case. So, but as is right now, I don't think that's possible, but maybe in the future. Quick note on a sequencer. I know a lot of people were saying that they were disappointed that there wasn't a sequencer in the analog heat plus effects. I get that because, the Elektron workflow is very sequencer based. It would have been interesting to see something like that. I think it would have cluttered the interface pretty dramatically. While I think it would be cool to see something like that, I'm not sure I would have been happy about it because I like the way the analog heat already is. I've used the Mark I for years at this point. If they would have changed up the interface dramatically for a sequencer, I'm not sure if I would have enjoyed that as much. It definitely would have put it into some more esoteric effects processing ranges, which would have been cool for sure. But in a way, I'm kind of happy that they stuck with this interface and just added upon it, albeit with a definite price hike. But to wrap things up, I am definitely happy about the analog heat plus effects. I'm liking what I'm getting out of there. I do wish the effects were a bit better, and I'm hoping that a update in the future with the firmware could add some additional algorithms, both the delay, reverb, chorus type of stuff. Who knows, maybe even a new thing could be added. Like I said, with the Overbridge thing, there could be things that get added to this box, and hopefully there's enough CPU in there to be able to handle those type of of things. Oh, I also didn't mention about the inputs. It definitely would have been nice to have more inputs. So that is something that I'm a little disappointed about. You know, an additional A, B, C, D, kind of like on the Octatrack, would have been very helpful for like a pseudo mixer in this. So definite points being docked on that one. I am disappointed about that. But as it stands, I still like this box, and I'm definitely happy it's in my studio right now. Should you pick up one of these boxes? I cannot answer that question for you. Chances are probably not, because most of these effects you could probably just get in your DAW. But if you do have a lot of outboard gear and you want to apply some additional tweaking and all that, I do think it's powerful, and you can get some interesting things and fatten up some relatively cold digital synthesizers. Cold in quotations. And as always, if you do plan on picking up one of these guys and you want to support the channel, if you enjoyed the content, consider using our affiliate links with Zounds. So if you do that, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Even if you buy cables or you know, another synth, definitely helps out with the channel. But I'd definitely like to know what you think. If you have any experience with the analog heat or the plus effects and want to share some thoughts, definitely drop the comments below. I'll check them out. But yeah, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you making it to the end as well. So thank you very much for that. And I'll see you next time for another one. Peace.